What happens when a legend is born not in the glitz of a draft stage, nor the roar of an MVP crowd, but in the raw silence that comes after betrayal? Picture it. The 19th of February, '85, the All-Star break just ended. Michael Jordan is still just a rookie, with a gap-toothed smile and an impossible vertical kid. But already, he's wearing a target on his back. The league's veterans, the kings of their era, decide to teach him a lesson. They freeze him out, leaving him isolated on the biggest stage of his young career.
Michael Jordan with 4 seconds to go. Thomas going for three-point. Hits it in.
But what they didn't realize was this. Michael Jordan wasn't built like anyone they'd ever met. To him, every slight, every cold shoulder was just fuel. What happened next wasn't just a basketball game, it was a reckoning. And it became the first spark in one of the NBA's greatest rivalries. This is the story of how a rookie named Jordan turned revenge into legend, and how a night in Chicago changed everything. They tried to freeze him out, so he torched them instead. The NBA in 1985 felt like a finished painting. The canvas was complete. Larry Bird and Magic Johnson, the two brushstrokes that brought the league back from chaos. Their rivalry didn't just revive basketball, it turned it into theater. The Lakers and Celtics dominated the headlines, the highlight reels, and the trophies. They were the twin suns around which the NBA universe revolved. But sometimes, the whole game changes with one spark. And that spark came wearing a gold chain, a Carolina smile, and the number 23. Michael Jordan wasn't just a new name, he was in a new era.
The question is, could one man beat the Lakers, or do you need a more diversified attack today?
Well, we played the Boston Celtics, but I think it's going to be more of a 5-man game, and we really have to play a complete basketball game. I don't think one man can beat the Boston Celtics.
It's hard to imagine that 6 weeks ago you were sitting on the bench.
Yeah, it is. It's very hard for me to imagine. I'm very happy I'm playing now, and I'm very happy I can contribute to the team.
Only 21 years, old, barely old enough to rent a car, and already being called the next big thing. Sports Illustrated plastered him on their cover. Nike handed him $1 million shoe deal before he played a single game. Kids copied his moves. Cameras followed his every step. He didn't enter the NBA quietly. He arrived like thunder. And that didn't sit well with everyone. You see, the NBA was still a league of scars, of men who had fought tooth and nail for every inch of their legacy. They'd come up in hard times, empty arenas, second-rate salaries, no promises of stardom. To them, greatness had to be earned through sweat and pain. But this rookie? He hadn't been hazed. He'd been handed the keys. And so, All-Star Weekend in Indianapolis became more than just a showcase. It became a proving ground. Inside that Eastern Conference locker room, the tension wasn't loud, but it was heavy. And at the center of it stood Isiah Thomas. Charismatic, brilliant, fiercely competitive, Isiah was the leader of a rising Detroit Pistons squad that had clawed its way to respect. He wasn't just putting up numbers, 21 points, 14 assists, he was orchestrating a movement. Detroit was coming. But Isiah didn't come to Indianapolis to celebrate a rookie. Not this one. The whispers began quiet, calculated. Don't pass him the ball. Let him feel what it's like to wait. This is our league, not his.
There's some controversy in here about how much Michael Jordan did and didn't get the basketball in the All-Star game, David, and whether Isiah had anything to do with it. Will that affect the game tonight?
Whether it was a conspiracy or just a collective decision made on instinct, the result was the same. Jordan was iced out. Every time he cut to the basket, hands went elsewhere. Every time he clapped for the ball, eyes looked away. He ended the game with just 7 points. Not because he failed, but because they never let him try. And make no mistake, this wasn't just strategy. It was a message. You haven't earned this yet. That weekend in Indianapolis didn't humble him. It hardened him. It turned a promising rookie into a man on a mission. It turned a silent snub into the beginning of a war. And it set the stage for one of the most bitter rivalries the game has ever seen. Because when you try to freeze out Michael Jordan, you don't cool him off. You just give him a reason to burn the whole thing down. Detroit, in the mid-82nd, was becoming something of a battleground. City gritty, industrial, reborn from rust and unrest. And on the court, their basketball team was molding itself in that same image. Tough, relentless, unafraid. And at the center of it all was Isiah Thomas. He didn't look like your typical NBA alpha, barely over 6 feet, baby-faced, always smiling. But beneath that grin was something colder. sharper. He saw the court like a battlefield and moved through it like a general setting traps, baiting defenders, dictating tempo. Every bounce pass was a decision. Every hesitation, a setup. He was averaging 14 assists, scoring at will, and dragging the Pistons out of mediocrity with nothing but fire and willpower. He had soldiers too. Bill Laimbeer, the human battering ram, Kelly Tripucka, the smooth shooter, Vinnie Johnson, the instant offense off the bench. They weren't polished, they weren't glamorous, but they were coming for the East. They were coming for Boston. And then, just as the Pistons were knocking on the door of the elite, the headlines shifted. Suddenly, it wasn't about Isiah's brilliance, or Detroit's climb, or their warpath toward the playoffs. It was about him, Michael Jordan, a rookie, a kid, and he was everywhere. To Isiah, it felt like an ambush. He had waited his turn, paid every due, fought for every inch. And now this newcomer, still learning the NBA ropes, was being treated like royalty, like the chosen one. It wasn't just irritating, it was a threat. And so, All-Star Weekend became more than a showcase. It became a reckoning. Freezing Jordan out wasn't just strategy, it was symbolism. It was the league's older guard drawing a line in the sand. You're not one of us. Not yet. But what they didn't realize was that Michael Jordan didn't need their approval. He needed a reason. And they had just given him one. 2 days later, the schedule handed fate, a script that only sports can write. The 12th of February, 1985. Chicago Stadium, Pistons versus Bulls. The tension was thick enough to feel in the air. You could see it in the eyes of the fans, in the extra stiffness of warm-ups. No cameras caught what was said in the tunnels, or if Jordan and Isiah even looked at each other before tip-off. But you didn't need the footage to feel the weight of what was coming. Detroit entered the game with a 30-19 record, a well-coached team, built around experienced veterans, and rapidly climbing the ranks in the Eastern Conference. They had playoff ambitions. They had chemistry. They had toughness and a gritty, hard-nosed style of play. In Chicago, they stood at 24-25, barely staying afloat in a turbulent season, relying on explosive bursts from Orlando Woolridge, brief flashes from Quentin Daly, and nightly miracles from their rookie wearing number 23 Michael Jordan. They weren't supposed to beat teams like Detroit. But something had changed. This wasn't just another game. Not for Michael. He wasn't just playing for a win anymore. He was playing for something deeper. Pride. Payback. Position. What the veterans didn't understand is that Michael Jordan didn't shrink from slights. He collected them. He took every cold shoulder and stored it like kindling. And when the moment was right, 48 hours after the All-Star game, the Bulls faced the Pistons back in Chicago. Michael Jordan lit the whole thing on fire. Same arena, same cast, but a very different Michael Jordan. He didn't just play well, he exploded. No forgiveness, no hesitation. And once the ball tipped, the storm began. From the first possession, Jordan attacked like a man possessed. There was no hesitation, no waiting for the game to come to him. He took it. Isolation, pull-up jumper, hang in the air, and won. He wasn't just scoring, he was sending a message. Every bucket was a rebuttal. Every dunk, a rebuttal. Every stare down, every glance at the Pistons bench, it all said the same thing. I heard you. I felt you. Now feel this. It all landed like a punch to the gut of everyone who said he wasn't ready. And maybe, in that moment, they realized something. They hadn't kept Jordan out of the spotlight. They'd made him unstoppable.
In that zone of everything was going, he was making one shot better than the next.
By the end of the night, the numbers were undeniable.
48 on the night from Michael Jordan.
And he deserves a lot of the credit.
134-126, Chicago in overtime. 32 to play at Chicago Stadium. Now he's got 49 as he hits the next free throw.
Michael Jordan, 49 points. No assists, no apologies, just domination. Chicago won. And the crowd erupted not just because the Bulls had beaten a better team, but because they'd watched a statement being made in real time. This wasn't just the response of a rookie with something to prove. This was the arrival of something bigger. A rivalry was being born, because what started as a silent freeze-out had become a firestorm. And in that moment, the basketball world began to realize something. You can try to humble Michael Jordan, you can try to shut him out, but all you'll do is give him a reason to burn your house down. And Detroit? They were the first to feel the heat. The United Center crowd sensed it before the tip-off. You could feel it in the air, heavy, electric, almost confrontational. There was no smile, no dap, no brotherhood in that pre-game handshake. Just two men locked in quiet warfare. To the fans, it was Bulls versus Pistons. To Michael Jordan, it was something else entirely. This wasn't about standings. This was a statement. From the opening possession, he didn't wait to get into rhythm. No feel-out phase. No pacing. The moment the ball touched his fingertips, he was gone coast to coast, like a predator that had been caged for far too long.
A high-flying, acrobatic dazzler. The 6'5" guard has the Bulls in contention for a playoff spot. Averaging over 27 points per game, Jordan has been wowing fans from coast to coast.
He blew by the first defender, Euro stepped around the second, and finished high off the glass. It wasn't just 2 points. It was a warning. Then came the defense. Isiah tried to lull him into a screen. He didn't get that far. Jordan read it, jumped the passing lane, and picked his pocket clean like it was personal. He took 2 long strides and rose above the rim for a one-handed flush that sent shockwaves through the building. But he didn't run back on defense. He paused just long enough to turn, find Isiah, and lock eyes. The message was simple: not tonight. Every possession after that felt like an exorcism. He attacked the rim like he was erasing something from memory. Spin moves, double pumps, reverse layups kissed off glass like brushstrokes. He crashed the boards with violent intention, ripped rebounds away from Detroit's bigs, and ignited fast breaks like a general leading a charge. But he wasn't selfish. On one play, he drew 2 defenders into the paint. Then, at the last second, fired a no-look dime to Orlando Woolridge, who soared and detonated a poster dunk that brought the house to its feet. It wasn't just about scoring anymore. It was about energy, contagious, radiant, unforgiving energy. And the Pistons? They weren't just being outplayed, they were being overwhelmed. Isiah tried to answer, pushing the ball up the court, barking orders. But every time he looked to shift momentum, Jordan was already there, shadowing, anticipating, interrupting. He threw everything at him: hedges, traps, physical bumps off the ball. But MJ countered with something new every time. A crossover that left defenders reaching at ghosts. A high-arcing turnaround fadeaway that dropped through the net like silk. A soaring finger roll in traffic that made gravity look like a joke. By the time the halftime buzzer sounded, Chicago led by 6. But the box score didn't tell the whole story. The Pistons walked into the locker room stunned, like men who had seen something they couldn't quite explain. And the crowd? They were no longer cheering, they were roaring. Like they just watched a storm blow through. And Michael Jordan? He walked back to the tunnel without celebration. No fist pump, no grin, no theatrics. Because for him, this wasn't the end. It was the beginning. He wasn't done. Not even close. And in the second half, he'd return not to finish the game, but to finish the message. If you thought Jordan would fade after that first half storm, then you never really knew who you were watching.
7-footers, it really doesn't matter, because he surely plays like he's 7 or 8 feet, or he can fly through the air.
Because in the second half, he didn't slow down. He escalated. While most players would catch their breath, conserve energy, Jordan pressed the accelerator. Every possession became more daring, more violent, more precise. He wove through double teams like they weren't there, double clutching midair, switching hands in mid-flight, adjusting to contact like a magician sculpting the laws of physics. He banked in shots from impossible angles, falling sideways, legs tangled, still spinning the ball perfectly off the glass. And when Chicago needed a second chance, he crashed the offensive boards, out-jumping Detroit's bigs, tipping in missed shots, diving into the paint like it owed him something. Then came a moment that made everyone in the arena and on Detroit's bench go quiet. Jordan caught the ball just outside the paint, pivoted, and threw up a one-handed hook shot over a collapsing defender. It dropped clean. A move straight from Kareem's playbook, executed by a shooting guard with no business even trying it. The Pistons looked around, confused. Nothing was working. Jordan wasn't just hot. He was inevitable. And then, something broke. On one play, He slashed in from the left wing. The lane opened. Detroit's help defense hesitated. No one even jumped. They just watched. The message was clear. You don't stop this. You survive it. But MJ wasn't done punishing. It wasn't just about points. It was about control. Defensively, he was everywhere like a panther in the weeds, timing his attacks with chilling accuracy. He tipped passes out of bounds, snatched lazy cross-court swings, and hounded Isiah so tight, it felt like every breath was contested. Every time Isiah tried to orchestrate, Jordan disrupted the rhythm, turning set plays into broken fragments. As the clock wound down and the tension mounted, the crowd couldn't sit anymore. The building was alive, buzzing, shaking, gasping. With under a minute left, Detroit pulled within 2, then tied it. And with seconds left, the Pistons had a chance to steal the game. Isiah Thomas took the inbound. He scanned the floor, then attacked. 1 dribble. 2. He tried to get past the screen, but Jordan read it, jumped the angle, and with surgical precision, reached in, swiped clean, and forced the turnover. The arena erupted. Isiah stumbled. Jordan stood still, eyes locked, breathing steady. He wasn't celebrating. He was calculating. Chicago had dodged the dagger, and they weren't going to let the second chance slip away. Overtime was next. And Jordan? He wasn't just ready. He was waiting to finish the message he started 48 hours earlier, the one they thought they could silence with politics, the one they thought they could suppress with ego and exclusion. But Michael Jordan doesn't fade under pressure. He becomes pressure itself. And in overtime, Detroit was about to feel all of it. Overtime is not for the ordinary. It's not for the tired, not for the hesitant. It's where nerves fray, lungs burn, and legacies are forged in the fires of exhaustion. It's where heroes break or become immortal. But on this night, Michael Jordan doesn't blink. He's drenched in sweat, every muscle screaming, but his eyes remain sharp. Not just playing, commanding. He battles in the trenches, ripping rebounds in traffic, absorbing body blows, carving space where there shouldn't be any. While others gasp for air, Jordan makes decisions. Smart ones, timely ones, ruthless ones. He threads a no-look dime to Sidney Green, hitting him perfectly in rhythm for a smooth jumper. Seconds later, he beats everyone down the floor, catching the outlet, gliding in for 2 more. Then it happens. A brutal drive, a body check mid-air, the hardest foul of the game, the kind that derails most men. But Jordan, he doesn't flinch. He gets up, he stares down the line, and buries the free throw. Not just with precision, but with that cold, unshakable focus. The look of someone who's not just surviving the moment, he's owning it. Detroit throws everything they've got. Double teams, triple teams, trap rotations, hard fouls, elbows, contact, chaos. But it doesn't work. Because you can't trap what won't yield. You can't stop something that refuses to be moved. Jordan spins through the trees, slices underarms, floats over outstretched hands, wills through contact, and scores again, and again, and again. Every basket isn't just a number, it's a sentence in a speech, a declaration of destiny, a message, louder each time. This is my time. The game slips away from the Pistons. The crowd, once on edge, rises in reverent awe. There's no more shouting, just absorption. They're not watching a player anymore. They're watching a phenomenon. Jordan walks to the bench, sweat soaked, chest heaving, eyes sharp, battle-tested, but unbroken. He doesn't raise his arms. He doesn't need to.
48 on the night for Michael Jordan. 48 on the night for Michael Jordan.
And he deserves a lot of the credit.
134, 126, Chicago in overtime. 32 to play at Chicago Stadium. Now he's got 49.
49 points, 15 rebounds, 5 assists, 4 steals, over 60% shooting, 0 fear, 0 hesitation, all heart. That night, the NBA didn't just witness a performance, it witnessed a transformation. A young man becoming something more than human on that court, becoming inevitable, becoming eternal. Because that night, the league didn't just see greatness, it saw the future. And that future wore a number 23 jersey. That night, the world stopped doubting and started watching because Michael Jordan had arrived and he wasn't going anywhere. But in truth, that night was something far bigger. It wasn't just a game. It was an ignition point, the quiet spark that would grow into one of the fiercest rivalries the NBA has ever seen. The 19th of February, '85. The All-Star Game. Michael Jordan, just a rookie, dazzling fans with his gravity-defying grace, entered the league with hype few had ever seen. But not everyone welcomed the prodigy with open arms. Behind the smiles and handshakes, the veterans led by Isiah Thomas felt threatened. The story goes that they shut him out. No passes, no rhythm, no welcome, just ice.
Call it the freeze-out game because it was widely reported that they froze him out. They were intentionally not letting Michael get the ball and do things. And
Jordan never forgot. Years later, Jordan would say, that was personal. Because for him, it always became personal. He didn't just play the game, he hunted memories. He turned disrespect into fuel. And in the years that followed, that moment became the seed of a rivalry that would define a decade. Jordan versus Isiah, the Bulls versus the Pistons, artistry versus brutality, grace versus grit. In the mid to late 82nd, both teams were ascending. The Pistons had already found their identity, the bad boys. Hard-nosed, no-nonsense enforcers who believed pain was a strategy. Their defense didn't just challenge you. It dared you to survive. And Jordan? He was ascending too. Scoring titles, MVP-level performances. But new rings? Why? Because standing between him and immortality was a wall built in Detroit. A wall with elbows, fists, and attitude. They built the Jordan rules, just for him. Hit him early. Hit him often. Force him left. Take away the air. Strip him of his confidence. Their goal wasn't just to stop him, it was to break him. And for a time, they did. The Pistons sent the Bulls home in 2088, then again in 2089. And in 1990, they humiliated them in Game 7 of the Eastern Conference Finals, leaving Jordan bloodied, exhausted, and heartbroken. But here's the difference between Michael Jordan and every other superstar. He didn't run. He didn't beg for help. He evolved. He hit the weight room, hardened his body, hardened his mind. No more highlight dunks without consequences. No more jawing with referees. No more complaining. He came back meaner, sharper, merciless. And then, in 1991, everything changed. The Bulls didn't just beat the Pistons. They destroyed them. A clean sweep in the Eastern Conference Finals. No trash talk, no drama, just surgical execution. And when the clock hit 0 in Game 4, Isiah Thomas and the Pistons, those same bad boys who had tormented Jordan for years, walked off the court without a handshake. Not out of pride, out of defeat, out of fear. Because they knew the torch had been taken. That wasn't just the end of a series. It was the end of an era. And the beginning of his. From that day forward, Michael Jordan never looked back. 6 titles, 6 finals MVPs, a legacy forged not in easy victories, but in blood, sweat, and brutal rivalries. And the Pistons? They became the first ghosts in Jordan's mythology. Proof that greatness is not handed to you. It must be earned through pain, through scars, and through the kind of war that never really ends. Because in the world of Michael Jordan, revenge isn't a moment. It's a career. Jordan's greatness was never just about stats. It was never just the points per game, the MVPs, or the rings. It was about mentality, obsession, fire. He didn't just compete, he waged psychological warfare. He wasn't chasing numbers, he was chasing dominance. Every slight, every grudge, every perceived disrespect, real or imagined, became fuel. And Jordan had a gift for turning even the smallest moments into a lifelong mission. Players and coaches have talked for years about MJ's ability to create imagined enemies, stories he told himself, just to stay sharp, stay angry, stay lethal. But the All-Star freeze-out? That wasn't imagined. That was real. A deliberate, orchestrated humiliation on the league's biggest stage. And it didn't just hurt his pride. It forged his purpose. That moment became the origin story for a new kind of competitor, not just a player who wanted to win, but a man who wanted to crush you, who wanted to make you pay for ever doubting him. Publicly, ruthlessly, repeatedly, and at the center of that grudge was Isiah Thomas. Isiah was no stranger to adversity. A Chicago native, tough as steel, brilliant on the court, manipulative off it. He wasn't afraid to play the political game, the psychological game, or the physical one. And he had a team that matched his mentality. The bad boys, the Pistons, weren't built to entertain. They were built to punish, built to make you regret showing up. And when Jordan began to rise, they saw the threat early and responded with violence. Detroit's answer to Michael's brilliance wasn't poetry. It was brutality. They developed a defensive philosophy with one name: the Jordan rules. Hit him when he drives, double him before the catch, force him left, knock him down, and when he gets up, hit him again. It wasn't just strategy. It was psychological sabotage. They didn't want to stop him. They wanted to break him. To turn this high-flying, highlight reel prodigy into something human, something afraid. But what they didn't understand, what they couldn't understand, was that Michael Jordan didn't fold under pressure. He expanded. And on that cold February night in Chicago, when he lit up the Pistons in a regular season game that felt like a playoff war, something became crystal clear. Michael Jordan could not be broken. He could only be provoked. That's what made him different. While other stars tried to ignore slights, Jordan stored them, filed them away like ammunition, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. And the Pistons? They gave him a decade's worth of fire. Every hard foul, every smirk, every headline doubted his toughness. Every playoff elimination, he absorbed it all. And one day, he returned it. In sweeps, in dunks, in domination. Because Jordan never got even. He got ahead. And then he made sure you remembered why. Looking back now, with decades of hindsight and a mountain of legacy behind him, one thing becomes crystal clear. The 14th of February, 1985, wasn't just a game. It was a statement, a spark, a warning that most of the league didn't fully hear, not until it was far too late. That All-Star weekend was supposed to be a celebration, a gathering of the league's best. But for a 21-year-old rookie named Michael Jordan, it became something else entirely. They called it the freeze-out, a silent, orchestrated effort by a group of veterans led by Isiah Thomas to remind the new kid that respect in the NBA had to be earned the hard way. No passes, no shortcuts, no easy road to the throne. And so, on national television, Jordan was iced out, barely passed the ball, pushed to the sidelines, humiliated in a subtle but unmistakable way. Most players might have swallowed their pride, shrugged it off, licked their wounds quietly, and moved on. But Jordan? He wasn't built for passive submission. That moment lit a fire, and not the kind that fades after a few games. It was the kind of fire that forges dynasties, rewrites narratives, and haunts those who sparked it. From that point on, every loss became personal. Every matchup with Detroit wasn't just about standings. It was about revenge. It was about memory. Michael Jordan didn't just play to win, he played to repay. And Isiah Thomas? He became the face of that repayment. They met in the playoffs again and again. Detroit battered him. They hit him harder than anyone had ever dared. They created the Jordan rules, a brutal, targeted defensive system designed solely to stop one man. They tried to break him physically and mentally, but they never broke him. Each time, Jordan came back stronger, more ruthless, more surgical, until finally, in 1991, the tide turned. The Bulls didn't just beat the Pistons, they swept them. And Isiah, rather than offer a handshake, walked off the floor in silence, a symbolic final act of bitterness that's still discussed to this day. That rivalry, bitter, bloody, brilliant, became one of the most iconic in NBA history. Because it wasn't just about talent. It was about pride, ego, pain, resilience, and legacy. Jordan would go on to win 6 championships. He became the face of global basketball, the standard, the measuring stick, the myth. But the roots of that greatness, the edge, the obsession, The rage to dominate all trace back to that moment in 1985 when a group of veterans tried to remind a rookie of his place. And in doing so, they unintentionally defined his place in history. They made it personal. And when you make it personal with Michael Jordan, you create a monster you can never contain. Because every whispered insult, every dirty foul, every time they underestimated him, he wrote it down. He filed it, and he paid it back one bucket at a time. That's why he overtook the Pistons. Why he shattered the bad boys. Why he dominated the league for over a decade. Not just because he was the most talented, but because he was the most relentless. That's the real legacy of the freeze out. It wasn't a success. It was a mistake, a spark. The moment the NBA unknowingly gave birth to the greatest competitor the game has ever known. Sometimes, history turns on a single night, not just because of the score, not even because of the stat line, but because something deeper shifts. Old grudges resurface, silent tensions explode, and a spark becomes a wildfire. That February night wasn't just a game, it was a reckoning. For Michael Jordan, it wasn't about putting up numbers. It was about sending a message to the veterans who tried to freeze him out, to the league that wasn't ready to hand over the torch, to every doubter who thought Flash didn't come with fire. He didn't ask for respect. He took it. Every bucket was a response. Every move a reminder. I belong here. That wasn't just payback. It was a warning wrapped in hang time and cold fury. Doubt me, at your own risk. And for Isiah Thomas, it was something else entirely. Not defeat, but the beginning of something that would haunt and shape the rest of his career. A rivalry. Not born of words, but of wounds. Of tension that never quite healed. Because after that night, it wasn't just the Pistons versus the Bulls. It was pride versus potential. Experience versus inevitability. And no matter how many times Detroit threw him to the floor, Jordan kept getting up stronger, colder, more certain of who he was becoming. That night lit the fuse. And the decade that followed was the explosion. So the next time you hear a GOAT, debate, or see another highlight reel set to thunderous applause, pause for a moment. Remember that every legend begins in the shadows of doubt. Every rivalry starts with a slight, with a smirk, with someone saying, "You're not ready. You don't belong here. You can't." And on that frozen night in Chicago, Michael Jordan didn't answer with words. He answered with a look, with a dunk, with fire in his eyes and ice in his veins. And the message was clear. Watch me, M. Because this isn't just the beginning of my career. It's the beginning of your end. If you like this video, don't forget to press the subscribe Amazing Hoops button and ring the bell to receive notifications about the latest videos from our channel. Please leave your comments and suggestions below in the comments section, and don't forget to share this video with your friends. This action also contributes to motivating us to work even more diligently. Have a great day.